Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, everybody. This is Pastor Katie from First United Methodist Church here in Yankton, South Dakota, and I'm so glad you've joined me for this week's episode of What's Going On. This week, I have a special guest with me, our Church Council Chair, Steve Pietila. Steve, thanks for joining me.
Yes, good afternoon. A beautiful day here in Yankton. It sounds like we have a couple days of this and then maybe a little more winter to come.
Well, I would be happy if winter was in our past, but I am enjoying the nice weather. So Steve, for those who might be unfamiliar with kind of the church council and what your role is in the church, how would you describe what you do as church council chair?
Yeah, I mean, really, the church council it's our job to be the voice of the membership, bring our opinions forward. We have myself as president and 9 other members that are really the representatives of the membership. And so I feel like my role in that position is just to represent what I believe the members would support in a majority, right? I bring my own opinion to things, but certainly I see myself as a representative as well. So yeah, sometimes it's difficult when you have a large membership to feel like you're representing everybody, but I just try to figure what would the majority believe is in the best interest of the church and protecting the church and really serving in a fiduciary capacity to make sure that all the committees are doing the appropriate things. You know, I serve as part of the finance committee as well in my representation as church council president. And then just really helping organize the meetings is one of my biggest responsibilities. Keep us on task, value everybody's time, and make sure we can. It is a very large group. I counted, hopefully I counted right. It's been a kind of moving number, but I think we have 26 members right now that serve between the members of the church council and then chairmen of committees serve and lay leaders serve on there. And we also have other attendees that come and do reports. So it's a large group to keep organized. And sometimes I'm more successful than other times at keeping everybody on task.
Well, when you have that many, in some ways, it can be like herding cats, and COVID hasn't helped at all. Although I will say that having meetings on Zoom sometimes is a little bit easier to kind of keep things on task because we're a little less inclined to just visit.
That's true. That is true. The meetings start on time and they end pretty promptly on time because you don't have that fellowship. And I think we all miss that. I'd rather have a meeting run a little late if I could just see everybody in person. But we're getting closer to that, and hopefully soon we can be together again.
Yes, we are always moving closer to that and kind of taking those steps each week to safely move our church toward being more and more open, which I'm really excited about. So, and Steve, so part of your job is, like you said, you represent the membership of the church, and church council really is where a lot of the big decisions in the church get made. I'm the pastor, but I actually don't have vote in this church. I'm not a member here. And so I have maybe a lot of thoughts about how things should get done, but it's not really up to me to always make those decisions. That church council, those leadership roles really are the ones that have to be convinced that they're good decisions to be made.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about our church and our ideas is that we're actually pretty proactive. We're looking forward. We're trying to think about how to be better in the future. We've tried to put vision statements together, and we've had some strategic planning during my time, just not about being authoritative and just saying yes or no to things. We're actually trying to set the vision for the future of the church. And certainly that's probably the most important thing, is establishing a strategic vision every year. Approving the budget, approving committee reports, that's all the minutia you have to go through, but really we are the strategic vision forward for the church.
Right. And because it is our church, and I think, I would say that coming out of the season of COVID, I've really been feeling like we are entering into this new season of the church, this new chapter of our life together. And I really see us moving, in the next few months, in the next year, into kind of some new and exciting times in the life of the church. And so I really feel like that's a good kind of segue into one of the things that church council is going to be tackling for the foreseeable future, as far as how do we set up the church for the future? How do we set up the church to be able to do and accomplish the things that we believe God is calling us to do? How do we structure ourselves so that we are being the church that God is asking us to be? And so that's kind of, I think, the driving questions that we're moving forward with right now.
I agree. I mean, I think one of the things I've seen in my time as the church council chair and just visiting with chairmen of other committees and visiting with general members is the frustration related to our structure, our leadership structure. Not that it has failed us, but it's just taking longer to get things done. I think we've heard death by committee, things like no quorum, our quorum's not met, so we couldn't take action on things. And a lot of that comes from having a large leadership structure, which keeps people involved, but it also requires involvement. And so if people can't attend a meeting, or if you have a large committee, it's tough to get a quorum there, and then action can't be taken. And a lot of times, and even I still am confused sometimes by what committee is responsible for what, who makes the final decision. Is it the trustees? Is it the finance committee? Is it the church council? And so I think there's an equal amount of frustration from those committee chairs and from other committee members as far as the structure of the leadership. So that's the thing that I've heard consistently, even before COVID. Lately, it seems like a lot of talks about COVID related things, but prior to that is looking at how we can change leadership structure to fulfill our missions and still be, looking towards the future.
Yeah, and I want to say that this is by no means something that is unique to this church. A lot of churches have been going through, these questions as far as, is there a simpler way to do things in a way that, part of the reason we have the structure that we do is because we are so driven by the people. That's the way the Methodist Church is set up, and intentionally so, that a pastor can't just come in and kind of bulldoze everything. Like, people have to be represented, their voices need to be heard. And so that's part of the reason that we have the system that we have. And that's a great thing, and something I don't think that we want to lose at any point. Speaking as the pastor, I don't want to lose that either. But there is a lot of confusion around roles and responsibilities, who has the ability to make decisions, who needs to have input on any decision. And the more that there is, the longer something can take, because if you have 4 committees that maybe have input on any one decision, that has to go from committee to committee. And if they meet every month, or even further apart than that, something that seems simple could take 6 months to have a decision be made, which can be really frustrating.
Right. Yeah, changing light bulb shouldn't take 5 different people to approve, what kind of light bulb you need to put in, or who's going to pay for the light bulb, right? And so, and it's not that bad, and it's never been that bad, but we are really a mission-driven church, right? We want to be out serving. We don't want to be in committees, sitting in meetings. We want to be out spreading our mission, doing our, if you're on the education committee, your time is better spent working with a child than it is working with another committee member. We want you to feel enabled to do work with your time. We only have so many free hours. And if that 1 hour a week is spent in a committee meeting instead of in service, it's not lost, but it's maybe not efficient.
Yeah, it's not utilizing people's time and commitment maybe in the best way that we could. And because, yeah, you mentioned, that people really have a limited amount of time in a week, and especially younger people, those with families and children that are young, like what I have, or even older who are in activities. It becomes really difficult for them to make long-term commitments to a committee, because all of our committees right now have a 3-year commitment to them, monthly to, meetings, and they're basically make their extra commitment to the church is to sit in a meeting and make decisions and kind of be removed a little bit from uh, the action of ministry. And so, I think, again, one of those motivating questions is how, instead of taking people in their discipleship journey and putting them on a committee to say, why don't you sit there and make a decision about this budget item, saying how can we involve them in the mission of the church, which is making disciples, either encouraging those within the church to go deeper in their faith through education, through small groups, through things like that, through outreach, bringing in new people. So there's a lot of action that can happen in the church, and so one of the things we're looking at is how do we kind of simplify how we do the business of the church in particular, so that we can free up people to pursue the passion that they have, that God has given them, for the mission of the church. And not to say that the business isn't mission, because it is, but it's a different kind of work for the church.
Yeah, I just to touch on that point a little more, you're right. I mean, I just think about my own personal experience. If I have to spend an hour in a week at a meeting, that's probably the next thing that comes up church related, I'm probably going to have to bypass, because I've already committed time to the church. I need to commit time to my family, to my friends, to my leisure activity. I can't commit 3 to 4 nights a week to be at the church. So that if I'm in a committee meeting, there's something else I can't be doing that I could be doing for the church. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And all of a sudden, in my case, and I think many of our couples, both the husband and wife serve on some committee at some level. And if those meetings are the same night, you're either finding a babysitter or just one of you can attend. And so there's a little frustration there for me personally, because I think we'd rather be spending time at studying together, Bible study, or time with our kids at Sunday school, maybe teaching. And so when you're in a committee, you block that off as your time commitment to the church when you could maybe be doing some kind of mission service outward.
Right. And I think also just people are typically more willing to say yes to something that they feel like is making a difference. And so if they can see how what they are doing is impacting the kingdom and it's not so removed, often people are a little more willing to be a part of that. And so again, making it so that kind of our administrative functions, again, are a little bit more streamlined to free up our people to be able to pursue what God is calling them to pursue. And in the action of ministry, I think is a really exciting proposition, and gets us even further in what we are called to do and who we are called to be as the church.
Yeah, and I think one thing I took away from the videos we watched and we've shared with other members of the church, he said in their committees of 1, get more done than committees of 10. And that really resonated with me. And I think we sometimes find that true. Yeah. And I think you mentioned herding cats earlier. I just want people to think about trying to get 26 people, communicate with 26 people and find a time to meet where you can get a majority in attendance, and then getting all that information out to 26 different people. And we all know sometimes we overlook emails, or things we get in email don't get the attention that they maybe should get. And so if you think about tightening that number up, taking 26 down to a more reasonable number, the power of what we could accomplish would be so much more. I believe that.
Yeah, so I'm going to just backtrack a little bit. So the church council is meeting this week. I believe when this video will go live, the church council is meeting that night, Tuesday night. And we have sent out some videos that for them to watch ahead of time. And these videos come from the Dakotas Conference. It is our conference treasurer, Jeff Pospisil, and the former DS of the Northwest District, Kermit Culver, who was a longtime pastor of Legacy United Methodist Church up in Bismarck. And Legacy early on switched their model of their church governance to something that would be similar to kind of what we are thinking about, which is streamlining our administrative committees to be together and allow them to be able to make decisions together, and then to kind of free up our more ministry focused, either to be staff driven if we have staff, which we have some incredible staff, or to be a little bit more clear about the who just the decision making process for those groups as well. And so that is the beginning of the process that we're looking at, is kind of just exploring what other churches have done. Legacy is not the only church in our conference who has shifted their leadership structure in this way. Many small churches have done it just out of expediency, because Steve said we had 100 people that serve on committees and roles, leadership roles. Many of our small churches don't even have 100 people. I mean, every person would have to be on a committee in those churches. And so they are doing it kind of out of, we only have 10 people that can really do this. And so they create their boards that way. But even our larger churches are doing this as a way to make it more possible for them to make decisions and to adapt to the ministry needs that are happening. And so I know First Church in Pierre, First Church in Watertown, in Sioux Falls. There's been a lot of churches that are moving in this direction, kind of for some of the reasons that we have stated, which is just how do we eliminate some of the excess of meetings that a lot of people just can't commit to anymore because our time is so, committed elsewhere. But how do we also make it easier for decisions to get made in the church so that we can keep moving forward and reaching people for Christ, which is our ultimate mission.
Yeah, and I don't think, just to be clear, I don't think we're talking about eliminating all these committees. It would just actually be allowing these committees to be more fluid. So, the education committee doesn't have to have 9 members that have 3-year terms. It could be a structure of 7 people, 12 people that are passionate about education, want to help with those programs, and want to be in there volunteering and are mission driven by this, instead of people that, I mean, sometimes it's difficult to find somebody that says, yeah, I want to sit on this committee for 3 years, and eventually then their time is up. Maybe they want to continue on with this service in that committee. And so this will give them the opportunity to serve in areas where they're passionate, and it doesn't put the pressure on begging somebody to serve on a committee because we need to fill a position. And we'd still have, we still have a leadership structure, and we'd still have elected members of church council or elected members of these administrative committees. But as a whole, most of the committees would be more fluid and volunteer driven, is the way I envision it.
Yeah, I would agree with you that I would see that as the same. And even more so, again, education's kind of been an area where we're starting to sort of feel out what this could look like, because we do have a staff position that can oversee and really provide vision and oversight for our education and our youth, and Tiffany. But I could even see it as, in the past we've had trunk or treat. Well, maybe there's someone who really loves trunk or treat, who's really passionate about that event. And that is the thing that they really want to do and take charge of, but maybe they don't care so much about what's happening at 605 as much. And so they come in a few months before, and really they're the ones that are leading trunk or treat, and they're creating that event, but then maybe they're doing other things the rest of the year. And so maybe their commitment isn't even just for all of youth, but it's for that one piece. That's what they care about, and they're going to do it extremely well because that's the one thing that they are really focusing on, and they want to make sure that that happens, and they have energy around it, and they're recruiting their people, because I think that's kind of where we're going to move, is that if you have a heart for missions, then you be a part of those decision-making processes. If you have a heart for member care, we have a lady who came in to this church, and again, when you talk about that committee of one, decided on a project that she wanted to do, and she just did it, and she showed up with this incredible for all of our shut-ins, for all of our nursing home members, she created little boxes of personalized verses. That wasn't a committee that did that. She just came in and said, I want to do this. And then I immediately connected her with that committee, because I'm like, she's a go-getter, and she's
right.
But that's what I want to see us do, is to have people who are like, I'm really passionate about this, and instead of waiting until they can get onto that committee and then have to spend 3 years when their heart is really in this thing that they want to do, I want to create an atmosphere where we can make that happen, that we're fluid enough and we have clear enough lines of authority that that decision can be made without having to be run up 4 different ladders of committees and things like that. And not to say that our committees are bad or that we're getting rid of them, but we're just going to make them simpler and clearer is my goal and my hope. Because there are certain ones that we have to have as United Methodists. We have a thing called the Book of Discipline, and there are 4 committees that we are required to have, that are required to be classed, that you have to be on for 3 years. And that's trustees, finance, SPRC, which is basically our HR, and nominations. And so those are the ones that we're looking at forming into a leadership team. And that's or the one board. And again, they are doing the administrative work of the church. All of our ministry, like focused stuff, is going to be more fluid. And then we'll have the administrative, and they're doing the business, they're doing the finances, they're doing the hiring and firing, they're taking care of the building, they're dealing with insurance, they're dealing with all of that kind of thing. That's what we're looking at keeping, where you have to be elected to it, that it's a 3-year commitment, because those are really big pieces for the church. The rest of this, we have a little more ability to adapt for what makes sense for Yankton, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And we have to remember, it's not like these people are becoming more powerful because it's a smaller group. There's not any more power shifted. The power still lies with the membership during charge conference. Any major decision made by these committees is approved through charge conference. So you're not taking any single person and giving them all this additional power. It's still going to be the membership driven decision. Any ultimate budget approval, salary, building decisions that are, large building decisions, those will still go through charge conference.
Yeah. And
so we're not giving any power to any one individual. That we as members continue to be the driver of the direction of this church and the future that comes with that.
Absolutely. And again, that's one of the things that I love about the Methodist Church and the way that our system is structured, is that the church should really, the vision and the energy should really come from the people, because we know that our pastors move and shift. And so if everything is based on what the pastor is doing or what the pastor wants, then that's a major upheaval every time you get a new pastor. And but if it really lies at the vision of the church and who you want to be and how things are done are really lie within the membership and the lay leadership, then that's a stable church. That's a stable structure where the pastor can come in and offer their gifts and service. And that's what I'm hoping to do here, is that I'm not trying to come in by any means and say everything you've done is terrible, because I don't believe that at all. All we're trying to do is, again, say, I think there's some ways that we can move into our future, and what I hear, what people want, and say, I think there might be a tool out here for us to utilize, and then it's my job to help cast that vision and to make that possible. Because at the end of the day, all I really care about is that this church is honoring God, and that this church is reaching people for Christ, that this church is a place where people find a spiritual home and feel like they are being fed. That's what I care about. And so all I'm looking for are ways that help us to get there. And putting that in front of the church leadership and saying, this is what I see as a possibility to help you, because again, that's what I do. That's what my job is to order the life of the church spiritually. And so having clear structures in place to help with the business and administrative side of the church, again, just helps us to also accomplish our ministry. And so, I took I completed a graduate certificate course in nonprofit church leadership administration through Dakota Wesleyan. And that was a big piece of it. And again, knowing that a lot of churches are moving this way because they're finding that either they can't fill these roles, these positions that we have, or it's just things kind of get lost along the way. They get decisions get lost in the midst of committees, or they don't know where things have landed, and there's just, again, how do we make it clear? How do we make it easier for people to live out their faith? And that's what we want to do.
Yes, yeah, and I think the leadership in the past of this church has done such an awesome job of putting us in a great spot that we're in to be ready to succeed here even further. And so it's not anything that's in the past. It was great. It was how leadership was structured for most churches in the Methodist faith for many, many years, and it worked successfully. But just looking forward, and that's part of my job is to look forward. I see this single governance method being a more successful and a better opportunity for our membership, and to put people out in the mission field, living through their passions, will bring a great deal of more positivity to our activities. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this brings, and again, we maybe haven't alluded to it, or maybe we have, but this has to go in front of the membership. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe give us an idea of, Katie, what this looks like now that we're this far along presenting it to everybody.
Yeah, so, this process has actually already been in process for a little bit. So last year, we, as the nominating committee, realized, one, in COVID, people really didn't want to take on new responsibilities. And so we actually froze all of our committees for a year and asked people to stay on, even if they had completed their 3-year term, so that we could work on this year. And everyone agreed, praise Jesus, that was a God thing. If you want to talk about God moments, everyone agreeing to stay on was one of my God moments for 2020. So to give us the time and the space to be able to kind of do these conversations and get this set up. So what it's looking like is Church Council is going to meet to kind of review sort of that initial vision, and then begin the work of taking that back to their committees. So part of Church Council is the chairs of our different committees. And then to be able to have those committees discuss and to be able to raise their own questions or concerns, or what's going to need to be decided or addressed, or areas that they really want to be focused on. And then what we're going to be looking for is a small group, probably no more than 5 people, that will meet over the summer to really dig into how to structure this, using what other churches have done and adapting it to what makes sense for Yankton. So in the fall, the hope is to have a proposal that will then get proposed, for the church to respond to Church Council to respond to it. Because ultimately, none of this can get adapted until it is voted on at Charge Conference in the fall. And so again, none of this gets moved on unless the church believes that it's the right thing for us to do. And so we're hoping throughout this process that you're going to know kind of where we are. We'll have regular updates in our reminder, and I will kind of allude to it when I can during the announcements of the church. Again, if you are really concerned about this or you have questions, I hope that you can either reach out to Steve or to me, and we'll do our best to kind of be as open as we can about where we are in the process, and whether or not something has been addressed or not. Again, the more that we hear from you, the more that we're going to create a system that makes sense for Yankton. Because again, we're not taking something from that works for someone else and just plopping it here. We're going to do that work of what makes sense for our church and what we are doing and who God is calling us to be. And so again, if it gets voted on at charge conference, then we would look at implementing it for 2022. And so, we're still in the nothing in the church happens quickly, but this one is for really intensive and intentional reasons, because we want to create a system with our leadership, with our people, that makes sense for who we are.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, if people want to reach out to me, they can call the church office, and Lisa knows my phone number and my email address. Certainly, I'm glad to hear from the member. We want to hear from the membership if there's concerns. If you have an idea of how this might best work for First United Methodist, again, we're not just going to copy somebody else's idea. We're going to make this unique to our church and our circumstances within the book of discipleship, of course. And I think this is a great direction we're going in.
Yeah, and we do benefit from the fact that other churches have lived into it some, and we can learn from their what they've gone through and the things that they've learned in their process. So we're certainly not reinventing the wheel, and we're benefiting from other people sort of beta testing it before it gets to us, which I always kind of like, having someone else have to figure out all the hiccups in the process. So, we're going to be utilizing as many resources as we can, both in our own church family, but also in our conference family, because that's one of the blessings that we have about being United Methodist is we have resources beyond just our church for things like this. So I'm excited for this process as much as I can be excited about governance things, but I'm excited in that it's going to help us move forward in the mission, which is really, again, that's why I'm here. That's what I do. That's what I love. So yeah. Any other thoughts, Steve, that again, we're just really in the beginning process of a lot of this, but we just want to put it out there. We want, again, for you to know what's happening, that this is coming out of conversations that have been happening for years before I came, that these conversations had been started. It's just, especially with COVID, kind of disrupting everything, it seems like this is the right time to tackle this. And so that's part of the reason we're looking at it now.
Yeah, I just want to let people know that if they have ideas, if they have missions that are important to them, it's a matter of just coming forward and say, I want to do this. I want to accomplish this. I'd like to see this during worship. Bring those ideas forward. You never know what somebody might say or how we might accept your ideas. I think, I think about the meeting the other day with the praise team, and one of the members went and did their own research and brought forward an idea for some online music that can supplement this time it takes us to get the praise team organized. That person took the initiative to find a solution to a problem. I mean, we're all members of this church. We're all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work together on finding solutions to problems, whether it's in the church or outside of the church.
Yeah, and again, I'm someone who I love to hear from people, and I love to, I'm still learning this church, and I'm still growing here with you, and so I love getting to partner with people in ministry, and to be that cheerleader and encourager and the person that's like, go for it. Yeah, let's do this. Let's find a way to make this happen. That's probably my favorite part of the job is those kind of conversations where we're working together. So that's absolutely what I want to see and want to hear. So, and we are going to be using that thing that they researched. And so, again, you just never know when you bring an idea forward where it could lead and where it could go, for sure. And speaking of, we've got some really exciting things coming up. We kicked off Camp March this last week, and everybody who came to worship got a bag of s'mores. And I want to say a special thanks to your wife, Michael, for putting all of those together. I came to church last week, and outside of my office door were like grocery bags full of s'mores. And I was like, oh yeah. And so that was really fun. And we're going to be able to hand out some more during 605 that's coming up. I want to say this Wednesday is 605, the first of the 2 times that we're offering it this month. And then this coming Sunday is Camp Sunday. We're having camp all month, but this Sunday is when you wear your camp clothes. We're going to be singing camp songs. The kids are going to be dancing. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And so we want to make sure that you're coming. Even if you're watching from home, I want you to wear your camp clothes. Maybe change out of your pajamas into your camp clothes for this Sunday. But I'm super excited. I hope that everybody is finding a camp that they want to attend. Remember that the church pays 50% of the cost of camps, and we have additional scholarships available if cost is a concern for you. Again, we'd never want cost to be a reason that someone doesn't go to camp. And so again, we're hoping to have our deadline for camps by the end of March, just because they have smaller capacity this year. And so we want to make sure that you get signed up and that you get into the camp that you want to get into. And so that's kind of the other things that are happening in the life of the church. But yeah, things are moving, things are shaking. We're going to be bringing back children's messages here shortly as well. So if your kids are coming to worship, they will be able to come up front soon as well. So know that that's in the works and happening shortly too. So lots of good things. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for joining me for today's podcast. And I hope that you all can join us for worship Sundays here at 10 a.m. Either online, you can find us on our website or on YouTube, or you can join us in person. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Going On, a video and audio podcast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. You can join us for worship Sundays at 10 a.m., either online at www.firstumcyankton.org or in person with our safety protocols in place. We do require mask and social distancing. We hope to see you in worship. God bless.